25 years ago, we climbed to the top of Montana and gazed across the sweeping landscapes, the artful glacial carvings of the last ice age, and the weather-defying 3-billion-year-old crystalline granites of the Archean Beartooth uplift.
Top of Montana!
Climbing Montana's tallest mountain, 12,807-foot Granite Peak, is a geologist's dream. Dave Rusling and Dana McNeil joined me on this grand adventure in August of the year 2000. I carried a Sony Mini DV camcorder in those days before GoPros and helmet cams, and I filmed our climb of Granite Peak via the famously difficult approach, Mystic Lake to Huckleberry Creek, and a wild bushwhack over jumbles of broken Archean basement rock to Avalanche Lake. North and east of Yellowstone Park, the Great Beartooth Mountains consist of some of the oldest continental basement rock on the planet. The deep geologic history of the Beartooths tends to be overshadowed by the twitching Yellowstone supervolcano and active hydrothermal features. But the Beartooth uplift has its own dramatic story, crystallized underfoot, that spans eons of time, epic mountain building, deep oceans, and continents wandering across the globe. This is a story of climbing Granite Peak and exploring the deep geology of this jewel of the Greater Yellowstone Geoecosystem. The year 2000 saw a summer season of epic fires in the western US and Canada. The forests were the driest in over 50 years, drier than 1988 when Yellowstone burned. 2.2 million acres went up in smoke in Montana and Idaho alone. The valleys of southwestern and south central Montana had been choked with smoke for weeks. We began hearing about forest closures and the potential of the Custer National Forest closing its gates to the public. But as our date approached, no fires were burning in the vicinity of Granite Peak, and at the last minute, we decided to go for it. Granite Peak is remote, to be sure. It would be even more difficult to access if it weren't for the Mystic Lake Dam and a 12-megawatt hydroelectric power generating facility built by Montana Power Company in the early 20th century. Roads and trails to Mystic Lake were well maintained to accommodate the dam and powerhouse. As we started our hike, we passed by several quaint 1930s-style wooden houses surrounded by well cared-for lawns. Caretakers and operators of the Mystic Lake Hydro Facility live in these dwellings in this remote, beautiful location at the base of the Beartooth Plateau. We soon came to a bridge over a 6-foot diameter penstock feeding water from Mystic Lake along the towering granite mountainside and dropping 1,000 feet to the hydroelectric powerhouse. In the 1920s, after the end of World War I, the population of Billings, Montana and surrounding areas was growing rapidly, and technological innovation was fueling a brief post-war economic boom in the United States. A plan was hatched by the Montana Power Company to build a dam and hydroelectric power plant on remote Mystic Lake in the Beartooth Mountains to accommodate the new growth. The dam and powerhouse were built between 1923 and 1927 and raised the level of Mystic Lake by more than 20 feet. The powerhouse itself is a classic mission-style construction of stone and brick, still operating with the original high-head turbines and generators. The switchbacks from the trailhead to Mystic Lake are like a wilderness interstate highway. They are highly engineered from the crystalline granite and very nice to hike on. As we hiked the 3 miles along West Rosebud Creek to the lake, we could feel the tremendous erosive energy of the cascading cataracts slowly breaking down the mighty Beartooths. We finally crested the ridge above Mystic Lake for a breathtaking first view. It's a wide and long body of water, reacting to the mountain winds with substantial swells and persistent whitecaps. The dark and twisted Huckleberry Creek meanders from the head of Mystic Lake along the base of the massive slab of Archean basement, known as Froze-to-Death Plateau, both leading to Granite Peak. As we crested the ridge above Mystic Lake, the impressive Mystic Lake Dam arched across the steep, narrow canyon below. The awesome weight of the lake obviously placing phenomenal pressure on the curved face of the structure. The concrete arch dam is 45 feet high and 368 feet long, and is designed to distribute the weight of the water through the arch and into the granitic rock walls of the canyon. We hiked down the ridge face to lake level, where one of the only white sand beaches in the Beartooths is popular with hikers and fishermen. We continued on along the rugged lakeshore. The terrain was variable as we veered away from the lakeshore at times and climbed over ridges that jutted into the reservoir. We humped about 2 miles along the southern shore to the northern tip of Mystic Lake. Already 5 miles in, we took a short rest before commencing the notorious bushwhack up Huckleberry Creek to Avalanche Lake beneath towering Granite Peak. At our rest stop, we encountered another climbing party, coming down from the mountain after a failed attempt. They had been stormed off the mountain the day before. They looked haggard. We donned our 65-pound packs and began the 2,500-foot ascent, another 5 miles to Avalanche Lake. The trail was certainly less traveled, as Robert Frost might have described it. We wove our way up the Huckleberry Creek drainage, a patchwork of game trails with deadfall around every corner. We came across random cairns here and there, but they were little help. We finally broke out of the more dense forested area. The trees were more sparse, and we were confronted with massive trash heaps of broken Archean basement rock. The Huckleberry Creek approach was everything we had heard, and more, because we were the mules with heavy packs climbing over deadfall and hopping truck-sized boulders up the wild and remote drainage. The extreme physical exertion of jumping from boulder to boulder tends to focus the mind. As a geologist, I found myself in a dream state, reading the massive granitic rocks and projecting to the time the gnarled granites of the Beartooth uplift were formed. The Precambrian metamorphic basement rocks of the Beartooths are some of the oldest on Earth. They were once buried 20 to 30 kilometers beneath the surface and represent many episodes of Earth evolution since the formation of our planet over 4 billion years ago. Only in recent geologic time, 65 million years ago, were the basement rocks of the Beartooths thrust to the surface. We stopped to refill our water bottles at pristine Princess Lake and marveled at the quiet grandeur of the surrounding granite fortress. The Cretaceous period was a time of great continental unrest. The supercontinent Pangaea had begun breaking up in the Middle Jurassic period, 175 million years ago. Now the heavy, iron-rich oceanic Farallon plate was colliding with and sinking below the lighter, silica-rich North American plate. Studies have shown that the Farallon plate was characterized by flat slab subduction, creating great compressive stresses far inland from the western edge of the continent. By the end of the Cretaceous period, around 65 million years ago, the tectonic stresses became so great that the deeply buried crystalline Archean basement rocks were literally broken and thrust up through millions of years of sedimentary overburden to the surface of the Earth. This great mountain-building event that created the Rocky Mountains, including the Beartooth uplift, is known as the Laramide orogeny. In 1936, Canadian geologist J. Tuzo Wilson, one of the founding fathers of plate tectonics, subdivided the Beartooth Mountains into 4 distinct structural blocks, separated by Laramide thrust faults and more recent active normal faults. As he mapped the remote wild country, Wilson had to work around a massive volcanic field known as the Absaroka volcanics of Eocene age, deposited across the region 53 to 43 million years ago. This volcanism occurred after the Laramide orogeny. The structural blocks that he recognized are the Beartooth Plateau Block, northeast of Yellowstone, the Old Snowy North Block, locally known as the Absaroka Range, the Old Snowy South Block, just north of Yellowstone, and the Stillwater Block, a 2.7 billion year old mafic igneous intrusion on the north perimeter of the Beartooth uplift. In late Archean time, magma was intruded into faults in the embryonic basement rocks. As the magma cooled, through a complicated crystallization sequence, heavier minerals sank to the bottom of the melt, forming layers rich in chromium, platinum, and palladium. The remaining magma cooled into a lighter, more silica-rich continental crust. Since World War II, the Stillwater mine has been an important commercial resource for these critical minerals. Granite Peak is right in the middle of the Beartooth Plateau Block, northeast of Yellowstone. Imagine, 1 eon or a billion years is 1,000 million years. Most of the rocks of the Beartooth uplift are older than 2.5 billion years. You can begin to grasp the depth of time that is represented in the Beartooths. But those are not the oldest Earth materials found in the Beartooths. In the early 2000s, 4 billion year old zircons were discovered within quartzite or metamorphosed sandstone in the eastern Beartooth Plateau Block. They were age-dated using a radiometric dating technique that measures the decay of uranium isotopes to lead isotopes over time. The consensus of researchers is that our solar system formed approximately 4.6 billion years ago from a dense cloud of interstellar gas and dust. The Earth and Moon coalesced from that cosmic cloud by around 4.5 billion years ago. In the early stages of Earth evolution, portions of the iron-rich mantle melted and became more silica-rich as it cooled and experienced crystal fractionation. Zircon crystals grew in this embryonic continental crust. Zircons are resistant to high temperature melting as well as surface weathering. It has been said that zircons are forever. When incorporated into sandstones, detrital zircons can survive in their original or fragmented form after the sandstone is metamorphosed by temperature and pressure. Because of this, these 4 billion-year-old zircons have survived all of the mountain building and erosion since the early Earth. This green Precambrian quartzite from the Beartooth uplift, for example, originated as sandstone before undergoing burial and metamorphism. We can infer that mountain building and erosion had to occur more than 4 billion years ago to create the sandstone that hosted the zircons. Like a lone survivor of a global holocaust, these remnant zircons hold the only remaining memories of a once vital past, the primordial Earth. I think every experience in nature is life-changing, but some stand out as physically and mentally challenging to the point of changing the essence of who you are. Granite Peak is one of those mountains that makes an impression that stays with you. Everything is magnified in the Beartooths. The streams seem wilder, with steeper cascading waterfalls, the lakes more abundant and remote, the mountains taller and more rugged. In geologic terms, this is a very young mountain range, and the mass wasting and erosive processes are palpable. For about 6 hours, we labored up the steep headwalls and around the boulder-strewn lake perimeters. Passing by Huckleberry Lake, Princess Lake, and along the extremely rocky shores of Snowball Lakes. We finally veered east across a small divide to the outlet or northern tip of Avalanche Lake. In the distance, in the waning light, the east ridge of Granite Peak and the foreshortened Granite Glacier greeted us. Dusk was creeping in when we spied 2 climbers camped in a small, grassy spot right at the north tip of Avalanche Lake. After 9 to 10 hours of difficult packing, we were ready to make camp. In the stark, treeless basin, we pitched our tents. From the time we arrived at camp, a group of opportunistic mountain goats challenged the perimeter of our campsite. We would step a few tens of feet away from camp to urinate, and the goats would rush over and eat the salty, urine-soaked grass. It was fascinating to have them so close to camp in this sparse, Mars-like environment.
Well, Kurt, I'm feeling pretty good about your chances today.
Great. I'm feeling good about it too.
We were up before the sun, boiling water on Optimus stoves and assembling gear for the summit attempt. We filtered water from the lake into camelbacks, double-checked crampons and climbing gear, and finally started out across the massive boulder field on the east side of Avalanche Lake. Boulder hopping in this terrain is no walk in the park. The boulders are huge, and much energy was expended crossing them. And this was simply the traverse of Avalanche Lake to get to the base of the climb. The summit of Granite Peak smiled at us with the first rays of morning sun. We found ourselves skiing down the angle of repose on several steep gullies on the lake traverse. Gravity was having its way with the mountain. After a couple hours of early morning work across the boulders, we came to the head of the lake and began climbing the steep moraine that led to the present-day Granite Glacier. Granite Peak was first climbed in August of 1923 by Ellers Koch, James C. Witham, and R.T. Ferguson. Several failed attempts had occurred before the first successful climb to the top, and the mountain has continued to be known for failed attempts due to sudden adverse weather. The capricious mountain is not the only danger in this remote fortress, as I found out later while researching the history of climbing Granite Peak. In 1994, Tony Rich, a climber from Butte, Montana, was killed by a massive rockfall that knocked him off the mountain. This was not an act of nature, but a thoughtless act of stupidity by humans trundling boulders from the summit for kicks. They were prosecuted and sentenced to fines and jail time.
More water. Drink a lot of water.
After crossing those impressive moraines, we finally reached the bottom of Granite Glacier. From there we could see the vast extent of the snowfield.
Time to put on the crampons.
We strapped on crampons and donned Gore-Tex shells for the slow trudge up the snow.
Nice.
The conditions were perfect. Walking across the firm styrofoam-like snow with crampons was a welcome relief after the unpredictable boulder hopping. It took a steady hour and a half to reach the top of the glacier. Now, above us, an awesome pile of broken Archean basement rock, like geologic skeletons from the early Earth. We scrambled up large boulders and jagged granite outcrops to the east ridge of Granite Peak. More snowfields and tiny house-sized boulders awaited us as we made our way along the wind-swept ridge. We finally got our first view of the famous snow bridge, a very narrow and exposed crossing that falls off steeply on either side of the ridge to the glaciers below. When we reached the snow bridge, another party had a belay rope set up. We gladly accepted an assist across the narrow crux. Once across, we faced a route-finding challenge up near vertical chimneys and exposed faces to the summit of Montana's highest peak. The last pitches to the summit were Class 4 to 5 vertical climbing puzzles with plenty of handholds, but of course, the exposure down the south face held our attention. The summit of Montana, a great accomplishment. We were extremely lucky to have the perfect weather for our Granite Peak climb.
Top of Montana.
Indeed, one of the climbers who were camped near us on Avalanche Lake had attempted the climb 4 previous times. This time he was successful.
This was my 5th attempt, and victory is glorious. It's fantastic up here. Yeah, made it to the snow bridge twice before and got stormed out before the snow bridge the other times. So, anyhow, fantastic to be here.
Congratulations, guys.
In adverse weather conditions, you often want to get off the exposed summit as quickly as possible. But on this day, we were privileged to have stunning weather and a 360-degree view of the Beartooth Plateau and parts of Montana and Wyoming. We were mesmerized by the great glacially carved drainages radiating in all directions like arteries, slowly carrying the mountains to the sea. The down climb and scramble back to camp was extremely taxing for all of us. One step at a time, we stumbled into camp long after dark, exhausted and running on empty. The next day, we bushwhacked and boulder hopped out the wild Huckleberry drainage and left behind only the memory of an incredible experience. Something about the natural world that we humans are so much a part of, though we don't seem to want to admit it, that evokes emotion and introspection. It's difficult to tell a story like this without thinking about the rapidly changing world of the 21st century. Climate change and science denial, ill-conceived social media and artificial intelligence, senseless wars, crimes in high places, and remorseless wealth inequality. A Lakota saying says it simply: when a man moves away from nature, his heart becomes hard. Authors and philosophers like Jared Diamond and Yuval Harari have suggested that the human race took a wrong turn a long time ago and stopped trying to live in balance with nature, but to consider nature as an enemy to be defeated. Imagine a society that respects human equality and the natural world, and technology is developed to work with nature rather than to exploit it for profit. Against all odds, it is a world to strive for.
Poor tree. Thank you, tree.